Hello everyone, it's Jin'taan here and welcome to another episode of Jin'talks. Today what I'm going to be doing is going over the Providence campaign, and that's something I didn't really expect to do, primarily because I felt that I would kind of be inherently biased when I was covering the subject, as I only have the perspective of one side, and the other side's going to be very unlikely to cooperate with me in order to get that viewpoint straight, as that requires the kind of revealing of a lot of hidden information on their side. And I don't really want to turn this channel into something that's, a propaganda outlet. That's not what I'm here for. But so many of you guys came to me and were like, when are you going to do a video about Providence? I really want to know what's happening down there. I couldn't resist the opportunity to share my point of view as a campaign commander of what happened down there, as it's very unique, and I guess very few people get to ever experience this in EVE Online, probably 100, 200 people maximum right now. In addition to this, I've been able to have a discussion with both Headliner, Killer Bee, and Ragnar Bile in order to kind of take as much bias as possible out of this report on the war. So without further delay, let's get stuck into things. Now, the last time we mentioned PL's actions against Providence in this channel was back in my Blue Donut War coverage, specifically the episode The Grind Continues, where it tangentially touched Test's efforts to defend the South against probing from PL in various theatres, with a decent-sized cap fight going in Legacy's favour being the end result of that interaction. Since that time, however, the situation has changed, with Pandemic Legion kicking off the year with renewed efforts against Providence's structures, taking down a significant number which were timed outside of Providence's EU time zone, which has long been the primary time zone of the Coalition. On your screen now is a list of kill mails and the value of those kill mails of structures that died before Providence was able to fully pivot and set up a unified vulnerability window across the Coalition, which was an effort that I personally led, as I realised it was going to be a necessity for us to continue this conflict. In addition to this, new allies had joined Pandemic Legion in the fight, with Honourable Third Party, a splinter of Spectre Fleet, taking their common camping grounds of White M over. We also saw the derelict super-killing purple-helmeted warriors deploying their assets in the northwest pocket of Providence and securing it for themselves. Northern Coalition DOT also decided to more heavily commit to the fight, moving capitals and their staging into Masaba, which meant covering the two main asset safety points and low-sec entrances of Providence, as Pandemic Legion still holds a presence in Assar, despite currently having their forward staging in 9UI. The only major strategic victory that was achieved by Providence during this time was right at the start, with the defense of the DTAC-G Fortizar, a system with long-standing history to CVA, where CVA was able to commit caps under Test's supercapital umbrella, successfully defending the timer using a mixture of cloaky nullified Proteuses and long-range dreads, though at a significant cost to both themselves and their allies that put Pandemic Legion and Provian friends roughly even in the ISK war. Providence was also assisted in subcap numbers during this fight by the Legacy Coalition, most notably with a large Test interceptor fleet. All this talk of citadels as major strategic objectives is not to ignore the SOV warfare that was going on, where Pandemic Legion made a concerted effort to leverage small gangs in order to entosis systems, and finding the ability to use capitals such as Rorquals or Force Auxiliaries, and in some cases even Dreadnoughts, to entosis systems, as Proviblock found itself with few capitals to use and lose, trying to fight an enemy who was able to rapidly form at a speed Providence typically needed days' notice for. This led to a lot of what basically amounts to SOV skirmishing, with small gangs fighting mid-scale fleets from both sides, which honestly sounds a lot more interesting than I found it to be in practice, but perhaps that's just me. After this period in December and January, there was finally a concerted response to this renewed attack, with myself leading a coalition meeting that laid out the game plan fairly clearly. Providence was going to accept that they couldn't effectively deal with Pandemic Legion's SOV attacks, and focus on holding strong points in the form of Providence's large number of citadels, one of the biggest advantages a defender can have in the game, alongside a long timer in which to coordinate and prepare, and not to mention secure allies. the acquisition of large numbers of which would likely be important in being able to hold the objective itself. Following this, I made some very upbeat comments to an INN reporter that I expect to be posted in the comments in this video, as they proved out to not be the case. And for a brief moment it looked like that might even be possible, with the next timer in YTAC-M being another DTAC-G style victory, where CVA was able to effectively deploy capitals relatively safely and deal with both Pandemic Legion and Northern Coalition DOT's slightly larger, subcap-based fleets in order to secure victory in the defense of the objective. And this time Providence was even able to do it without the assistance of other allies like Legacy Coalition, as has been important in the past. Unfortunately, after YTAC-M, no such victories would follow. The next timer saw one of the biggest form-ups in recent times from Providence, with 450 members across 2 fleets. However, NC-DOT and PL outformed this significantly, deploying roughly 550 subcapitals into the target system, alongside keeping another 150 or so behind in capitals. Seeing this, I decided to set the structure aside and blueball. Not engaging in some manner or another with subcaps here was probably a mistake due to the morale impacts it had, but not engaging with the capitals is, in my opinion, very sound. Providence would be unlikely to be able to replace any capital losses at this point in the war, as there was very little to nothing in way of a coalition capital stockpile, and Providence's industrial capacity was effectively hamstrung by the ongoing invasion. That meant that Providence's capital fleet was going to be a one-shot thing. There would be no already replaced in this war. The next weekend was practically a repeat of this event, though with smaller forces on both sides. I unfortunately can't recall exact numbers, and I think the difference in numbers between Providence and PL was lesser than previously, but without Test bringing a supercapital umbrella, there was no effective way for Providence to deploy capitals in order to make up that difference in number. As such, I called to blueball the second timer in a row, leading to the loss of a Soitoyo in H6 TAC alongside some other Asbels, if I remember correctly. It was at this point that I realised I needed to have a plan B if plan A didn't work, as quite honestly plan A had failed 2 times in a row. The next timer was different and a potentially offensive one for Providence, with a Pandemic Legion Fortizar anchoring in 9 UI, as well as 2 Tataras in Final Reinforce in 3GXF. Once again, I decided not to commit capitals as I did not feel it was safe enough, and instead opted to use the same tactic that I had used a few months prior in response to earlier prodding from Pandemic Legion, using massed suicide Talwars in an attempt to destroy an anchoring structure. This unfortunately proved to be an embarrassing failure, with the Fortizar barely getting beyond 90% structure, and taking a hellishly long time in tie-dye to do so. Something to note here is that the weekdays in between these weekends aren't quiet. There are now beginning to be Sov Stratops most days of the week for Providence, where things are getting super messy and weird. There's systems and TCUs and iHubs popping on both sides, with occasional wins for Providence in the mix, but the vast majority of wins going to Pandemic Legion as they slowly push up on Providence, not just from the east, but also from the south, crushing Providence into the northwestern corner of Providence near their staging in FTAC-Y. I asked Ragnar Bile for his insight on this level of Sov warfare, and he responded with a single picture of his hangar in 9 UI. And well, they say that a picture speaks 1,000 words, and this one certainly does in my opinion. The next timer saw Providence try a different angle, with Sov interceptors and bombers, along with a command destroyer fleet and several other allied bomber fleets, squaring off against NC-DOT in Jackdaws and PL in Fozzie Claws, supporting a complement of long-range Phoenixes in their takedown of 2 Provi Tataras. The outcome was interesting, with me whelping my CT fleet horribly, dying, and then hearing that a large portion of the NC-DOT Jackdaws had been bombed, and that the Inti fleet was currently killing few carriers in FTAC-Y. It was a crazy, messy day of fighting, but ISK-wise, PL was always in the lead, with the 2 Tataras that fell. The next Saturday saw Providence make a more proactive effort in order to harass NC. Siege fleets, bringing Serbs and bombers in order to try and break the tank of their standard long-range Phoenix-based squads, leading to NC. Bringing in carriers in order to push the Providence Serb fleet off, following a bomb run that did serious damage to, but crucially did not kill, an NC. Rogue fleet. It was relatively clear that the caps involved were never seriously challenged by the DPS put out by the Providence fleet, however. After some more skirmishing, the Rogue fleet returned, this time in Makarials, in order to put more pressure on the Providence Serbs, succeeding in killing several of them and eventually forcing Providence from the field, finishing up the objective in their wake. Sunday, on the other hand, saw Providence bring multiple allies to the field, with Initiative, The Bastion, Test Alliance Please Ignore, and Bombers Bar all committing subcaps to the grid in defense of a cluster of structures in Jive, specifically 2 Asbels and a Soy Toyo that had been reinforced previously. Proviblock was obviously feeling the wear of the war, with subcap numbers being noticeably lower than before. However, they were still able to field a substantial number of capitals, and, with the threat of test escalation behind them, lock the structure grids down after brief skirmishing from PL and NC was pushed back, with LR Dreads and carriers scoring the vast majority of the kills in this brief engagement. However, this defense was not without its own hitches, as on the way back from the fight in XHQ, Test was caught by the PL and NC. Subcaps, leading to them being escalated on by Pandemic Legion. Providence moved their Ferox fleet to support through the 10% tie-dye that surrounded the unplanned fight, but was unable to make a significant contribution to the fight, sitting on the in-gate and being told to turn around and leave them to it by Test. Following all this, a significant amount of political news came to the forefront, most notably via Elise Randolph's morale post, which revealed to the majority of those involved that ULI Federation, a major pilot contributor to the Proviblock coalition, was leaving to join the Legacy coalition. In doing so, they were joining the Russian alliance Rosada Regnum and retreating from Providence. This was then followed by my own decision to resign from the FC team of Providence and begin my move to Test Alliance Please Ignore. If you wish to read the full statement as to why, it'll be posted in the description below. Following this, unconfirmed rumours around 2 other holder alliances, namely Care Factor and Elemental Tide, surfaced within Providence, indicating that they planned to leave in the future as well. In addition to this, we saw Silent Infinity, or AFK, be reset to neutral over a lack of participation in CTAs, amongst other things. This is something that I'd predicted would happen and contributed to my decision to leave, as I felt there would no longer be any major benefit in conventional warfare against Pandemic Legion, which is the style of FCing I feel I can do somewhat competently. Simply put, skirmish and PvE hunting warfare isn't something I enjoy or excel at in EVE Online. Although evidently I'm not the world's greatest campaign commander either. In my opinion, this isn't going to be the end for Providence, however, as there's a long-standing history of Providence rising from the ashes in Lowsec after being evicted. We will, however, likely see a different style of fighting, as Pandemic Legion and NC. Take true number dominance over Providence and force them into decidedly more skirmish-focused tactics. Expect to see a lot more bomb runs, blops and interceptors in the theatre if frontal fighting continues, especially over Sov. One of the most promising things that I've seen during this war so far, and especially after I left, is that a lot of new FCs started to rise up through the ranks, people like Chotar and Lilith, along with increased activity from older CVA FCs in the team who originally fought to reclaim Providence years ago. So you're going to see a lot of new faces start to lead fleets in Providence and hopefully do good work there. I expect that they will adapt to this skirmish style well and hopefully score a few victories over PL here and there. Still, the question for me has to be how many other alliances like Severance, Arcs and APOC can weather this potentially up to 6 to 8 months of guerrilla warfare that we expect Providence to have to do from Lowsec in order to reclaim their nullsec territory. They're going to lose a lot of members. The question is whether leadership can keep as many of them as is necessary to keep their alliance sustaining itself around. It's going to be a hard slog for sure, but there is at least light at the end of the tunnel for Providence. Anyway, that's it for the main part of the show. Thank you for watching. One thing I would like to add is that I am actually now going to be opening up a Discord for people who watch these videos, just so that people can correct me and get in touch with me a little more easily, as I know that having a Discord tag is not always as effective as I'd hoped, given that I've now had to change it to Jin'taan Tappy. The direct link is in this end card, and I will put the URL down in the description below. Thank you for watching once again, and fly smart.